The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Aethermore Castle, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Princess Evangeline, barely 11 years old, skipped down the grand hallway with her usual boundless energy. Her golden curls bounced with each step, and her emerald dress rustled softly against the stone walls decorated with ancient tapestries. Captain Marcus stood at attention near the eastern corridor, his silver armor gleaming in the sunlight. He had served the royal family for 15 years, ever since he was a young soldier fresh from the military academy. His dark hair was now touched with gray at the temples, and his weathered face showed the wisdom that came from years of protecting the kingdom's most precious inhabitants. The palace buzzed with its usual morning activities. Servants hurried past carrying breakfast trays, their soft footsteps echoing in the vast spaces. Courtiers whispered among themselves about the day's upcoming events, their colorful robes creating a moving rainbow against the neutral stone walls. Princess Evangeline paused near a large portrait of her late grandmother, Queen Marianne, who had ruled Aethermore with grace and wisdom for 40 years. The young princess often stopped here, feeling a connection to the grandmother she had never met but heard countless stories about. The portrait showed a kind woman with gentle eyes and a warm smile, wearing the crown of stars that now belonged to Evangeline's father, King Edmund. As Evangeline stood admiring the portrait, she heard familiar footsteps approaching from the opposite end of the hallway. Queen Consort Isabel walked gracefully toward the throne room, her deep purple gown flowing elegantly behind her. Isabel had married King Edmund 3 years ago, bringing stability and happiness to the kingdom after the tragic loss of Evangeline's mother, when the princess was just 6 years old. The relationship between Evangeline and her stepmother had always been complicated. While Isabel tried her best to be kind and loving, the young princess sometimes felt uncertain about her place in this new family structure. The palace staff often whispered about the delicate balance between respecting the memory of the beloved former queen while embracing their new royal family member. Captain Marcus watched the scene unfold with professional interest. He had noticed the subtle tension that sometimes existed between the princess and queen consort. Though both women tried their best to maintain harmony, his job was to protect them both. But he also felt a special fondness for Princess Evangeline, having watched her grow from a tiny child into a spirited young lady. Queen Consort Isabel moved with purpose down the hallway, her mind focused on the important diplomatic meeting she was about to attend. Representatives from the neighboring kingdom of Valoria had arrived that morning to discuss trade agreements and border security. As the Queen Consort, Isabel played a crucial role in these negotiations, using her natural charm and intelligence to strengthen relationships with other kingdoms. Princess Evangeline suddenly felt a surge of emotion as she watched Isabel approach. Perhaps it was the morning light, or the way Isabel's kind expression reminded her of the stories she had heard about her own mother's gentleness. Without thinking, the young princess stepped forward into the center of the hallway. "Queen Isabel," Evangeline called out loudly, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. The unexpected sound broke the peaceful morning silence like a bell ringing in an empty church. Captain Marcus, who had been standing perfectly still in his traditional guard position, spun around instantly at the sound. His hand moved automatically toward his sword hilt. A trained response developed through years of protecting the royal family from potential threats. His sharp eyes quickly scanned the hallway for any signs of danger, his body tensing for action. The sudden movement of the heavily armored guard created a metallic clinking sound that seemed to amplify in the quiet corridor. Several nearby servants stopped their work, turning to see what had caused the disturbance. A young page carrying fresh flowers nearly dropped his precious cargo. Startled by the captain's swift reaction, Queen Consort Isabel stopped walking and turned toward the princess with surprise written across her elegant features. Her dark hair was arranged in an elaborate style befitting her royal status, and her intelligent blue eyes showed both curiosity and concern as she tried to understand what had prompted such an unusual outburst from her stepdaughter. "Evangeline, my dear," Isabel said softly, her voice carrying both warmth and gentle authority. "Is everything all right? You seem quite excited this morning." The princess stood frozen for a moment, suddenly aware that her impulsive action had created quite a scene. The hallway, which moments before had been filled with the normal, quiet activities of palace life, now felt charged with tension and expectation. Everyone present seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Captain Marcus slowly relaxed his defensive posture. Though his eyes remained alert, he recognized that there was no immediate threat. but something about the princess's behavior suggested that this moment was more significant than it appeared. In his years of service, he had learned to read the subtle signs that often preceded important events in the royal family's life. The morning sunlight continued to stream through the windows, but the atmosphere in the hallway had changed completely. What had begun as an ordinary day in the palace was clearly about to become something much more memorable. Princess Evangeline looked between Queen Consort Isabel and Captain Marcus. Knowing that whatever she said next would be heard and remembered by everyone present, the silence stretched for several heartbeats as the young princess gathered her courage to speak the words that had been building in her heart for months. Princess Evangeline took a deep breath, her small hands clasped tightly in front of her emerald dress. The words seemed to tumble out of her mouth before she could stop them. "I wanted to tell you that I had a dream about my mother last night," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "She told me that she likes you very much, and that she wants me to call you mother too, not just Queen Isabel." The hallway fell into complete silence. Captain Marcus felt his heart skip a beat as he witnessed this unexpected moment of vulnerability from the young princess. The servants who had stopped their work stood motionless, understanding instinctively that they were witnessing something private and precious. Queen Consort Isabel's eyes filled with tears, but she maintained her composed demeanor. She had hoped for this moment for 3 long years, but had never wanted to pressure the child. Isabel knew that earning Evangeline's love and trust was something that had to happen naturally, in its own time. "Oh, my sweet Evangeline," Isabel whispered, moving gracefully toward the princess. Her purple gown rustled softly as she knelt down to be at eye level with the child. "That sounds like a beautiful dream. Your mother must have been a very wise woman." Captain Marcus watched the touching scene unfold, remembering his own childhood when he had lost his father in battle. He understood the complexity of emotions that Princess Evangeline must be experiencing. The guard had seen many royal ceremonies and grand events, but this simple moment in the hallway seemed more important than any of them. "I miss her sometimes," Evangeline admitted quietly. "But I think maybe she sent you to take care of me and Papa." The dream felt so real, and she looked so happy when she talked about you. Queen Consort Isabel gently took the princess's hands in her own. "I would be honored if you wanted to call me mother," she said softly. "But only if it feels right in your heart. There's no rush, and I will love you just the same whether you call me mother, Queen Isabel, or anything else." The young princess smiled for the first time that morning, a genuine expression of joy that lit up her entire face. "I think I would like to try calling you mother," she said shyly. "But what if I forget sometimes and still say Queen Isabel? Then you can say whatever feels natural that day." Isabel replied with a warm laugh. Love doesn't follow strict rules about names and titles. Captain Marcus found himself deeply moved by the exchange. He had served the royal family through many difficult times, including the dark period after Queen Marianne's death, when the entire kingdom mourned. Seeing Princess Evangeline find happiness and peace with her new family brought him great satisfaction. The diplomatic representatives from Valoria chose that exact moment to appear at the far end of the hallway, their colorful ceremonial robes announcing their arrival. Ambassador Lord Theron, a tall man with a carefully groomed beard, led the group. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the scene of Queen Consort Isabel kneeling in the hallway with Princess Evangeline. Captain Marcus immediately stepped forward, his training taking over. "Your Majesty," he said formally to Queen Consort Isabel, "the Valorian delegation has arrived for your meeting." Isabel rose gracefully, smoothing her purple gown while maintaining her warm connection with Evangeline. The transition from intimate family moment to formal royal duty happened seamlessly, showing the skill that made her such an effective queen consort. "Thank you, Captain Marcus," Isabel replied with practiced dignity. She turned to Princess Evangeline and added softly, "We'll continue our conversation later, dear one. Perhaps over afternoon tea in the garden?" Princess Evangeline nodded eagerly, her earlier nervousness replaced by excitement about this new chapter in their relationship. "I would like that very much, Mother," she said, testing out the word carefully. Ambassador Lord Theron approached with measured steps, followed by his advisors. "Your Majesty," he said with a formal bow to Queen Consort Isabel, "the Kingdom of Valoria is honored by your gracious welcome." "The honor is ours, Ambassador," Isabel replied smoothly, immediately shifting into her diplomatic role. "Please, let us proceed to the conference chamber where we can discuss the matters that bring you to Ethermore." As the formal delegation began to move toward the meeting room, Princess Evangeline found herself standing alone with Captain Marcus. The guard looked down at the young princess, noting the bright happiness in her eyes that hadn't been there earlier that morning. "That was very brave, Your Highness," Captain Marcus said quietly, breaking from his usual formal tone. "Speaking from your heart takes more courage than any soldier's battle." Princess Evangeline looked up at the kind guard who had always made her feel safe in the palace. "Captain Marcus, do you think my real mother would really approve? I don't want to forget her." The experienced guard knelt down, his armor clanking softly. "Princess, I served your mother for many years, and I can tell you that she loved you more than life itself. I believe she would want nothing more than for you to be happy and loved. Queen Consort Isabel doesn't replace your mother's memory. She adds to your family." "Like having two mothers?" Evangeline asked thoughtfully. "Exactly like that," Captain Marcus confirmed with a gentle smile. "One who lives in your heart and memories, and one who can hug you and help you grow." The princess considered this wisdom carefully. Around them, the palace had returned to its normal rhythms. Servants continued their duties, courtiers resumed their conversations, and the morning sunlight continued to paint patterns on the marble floor. "Captain Marcus," Evangeline said suddenly, "will you teach me some of the palace guard signals? I want to learn how to protect people too, just like you protect us." The guard chuckled at the unexpected request. "Well, Your Highness, I suppose every princess should know how to defend her kingdom, but perhaps we should start with the basics and work our way up to the more advanced techniques." As they walked together toward the palace courtyard, Captain Marcus reflected on how this simple moment had changed the dynamics of the royal family. The healing that had just taken place between Princess Evangeline and Queen Consort Isabel would ripple through the entire kingdom, bringing the kind of stability and happiness that made Aethermore a place worth protecting. 3 weeks after the hallway incident, the kingdom of Aethermore buzzed with a different energy. Word had spread throughout the palace and beyond about the touching reconciliation between Princess Evangeline and Queen Consort Isabel. The servants spoke of it in warm whispers. The courtiers smiled more genuinely during formal events, and even the kingdom's citizens seemed to sense that their royal family had found a new harmony. Captain Marcus stood in his usual position near the eastern corridor, but now he often witnessed small moments of joy that had become commonplace. Princess Evangeline would run through the halls calling "Mother" with genuine excitement, and Queen Consort Isabel would respond with the same warmth whether she was dressed in simple day clothes or elaborate ceremonial robes. The morning sun painted the marble floors with familiar golden patterns as King Edmund walked slowly down the grand hallway, reviewing documents for the day's council meeting. His tall frame and graying beard gave him a distinguished appearance, but his eyes held a lightness that hadn't been there for years. "Captain Marcus," the king said as he approached the guard's position, "I wanted to thank you personally for your role in what happened here 3 weeks ago." Captain Marcus straightened his posture, surprised by the king's words. "Your Majesty, I'm not certain I understand. I simply responded to what I perceived as a potential security concern." King Edmund smiled knowingly. "Sometimes the most important moments happen when we're simply doing our duty. Your presence that morning, your steady reliability, helped create a safe space for my daughter to speak her heart. The servants have told me how you comforted her afterward and helped her understand the meaning of what had occurred." The king paused, looking at the spot where Princess Evangeline had made her declaration. "For 3 years, I've watched my daughter struggle with divided loyalties. She loved her mother's memory but felt guilty about accepting Isabel's affection. That morning, she finally found the courage to embrace both loves." Captain Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction hearing these words. In his 15 years of service, he had prevented numerous security threats and handled countless diplomatic situations, but knowing he had contributed to the healing of the royal family meant more to him than any medal or commendation. "Your Majesty," Captain Marcus said carefully, "Princess Evangeline mentioned wanting to learn palace guard techniques. With your permission, I thought I might teach her some basic self-defense skills and strategic thinking. Nothing dangerous, of course, but knowledge that might serve her well as she grows." "An excellent idea," King Edmund agreed immediately. "A princess who understands protection and strategy will become a wiser queen someday. Please coordinate with Queen Consort Isabel to ensure the lessons fit well with Evangeline's other studies." As if summoned by their conversation, Princess Evangeline's laughter echoed from the nearby garden courtyard, through the tall windows. They could see her having afternoon tea with Queen Consort Isabel under the blooming apple trees. The scene looked peaceful and natural, as if they had always shared this comfortable relationship. The Valorian trade negotiations concluded successfully yesterday, King Edmund mentioned to Captain Marcus. Ambassador Lord Theron specifically commented on Queen Consort Isabel's diplomatic skills and the warm atmosphere of our kingdom. He said that seeing our family's happiness convinced him that Ethermore would be a trustworthy long-term partner. Captain Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Happiness and stability often prove more persuasive than military might or economic pressure. Your Majesty. Indeed, the king agreed. And speaking of stability, I have an announcement to make at tonight's dinner. Queen Consort Isabel will officially adopt Princess Evangeline, making her legal status as Evangeline's mother complete. It was Evangeline's idea, actually. She approached me last week with a very mature request. The guard felt his eyes widen with surprise and pleasure. That's wonderful news, Your Majesty. The princess has truly found her confidence. From the garden came the sound of more laughter, followed by Queen Consort Isabel's voice explaining something about the different types of roses growing along the palace walls. Princess Evangeline's eager questions created a lovely melody of curiosity and learning that drifted through the open windows. Captain Marcus, King Edmund said with a more serious tone, I want you to know that your service to this family extends far beyond your official duties. You've been a constant source of strength and wisdom, especially during the difficult years after we lost my first queen. Evangeline trusts you completely, and that trust has helped her navigate some very complex emotions. The king reached into his formal coat and withdrew a small, beautifully crafted medallion featuring the royal seal surrounded by a circle of stars. This belonged to my father, King Alfred, and he received it from his father before him. It represents not just loyal service, but the kind of dedication that becomes part of a kingdom's foundation. Captain Marcus accepted the medallion with deep humility, understanding the significance of this family heirloom. Your Majesty, I am deeply honored. I pledge to continue serving Ethermore with the same dedication as long as I am able. I know you will, King Edmund replied warmly. And now I believe I hear my daughter calling for her guard captain. Something about practicing royal defensive positions in the courtyard? Sure enough, Princess Evangeline's voice could be heard calling, Captain Marcus, Mother says you can teach me the proper way to hold a practice sword today. The guard and king exchanged amused looks as they made their way toward the garden. Through the windows, they could see Princess Evangeline standing excitedly beside a small wooden practice sword that Queen Consort Isabel had apparently procured for the occasion. As Captain Marcus walked toward his new student, he reflected on how that single moment in the hallway had transformed not just the relationship between a stepmother and stepdaughter, but the entire emotional climate of the kingdom. The servants worked with lighter steps, the courtiers engaged in more genuine conversations, and the royal family radiated the kind of authentic happiness that inspired loyalty and affection throughout the realm. Princess Evangeline ran to meet him halfway across the garden, her face glowing with excitement. Captain Marcus, look what Mother found in the old armory. She says it was made specially for training young nobles in proper swordplay. Queen Consort Isabel approached more sedately, her elegant afternoon dress replaced with a practical but still beautiful working gown. I thought that if our daughter is going to learn protection techniques, she should have the proper equipment, she said to Captain Marcus with a warm smile. Our daughter, King Edmund repeated softly, testing the words. I like the sound of that very much. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden courtyard, the royal family of Ethermore began Princess Evangeline's first lesson in defensive strategy. Captain Marcus demonstrated basic positions while King Edmund offered encouragement, and Queen Consort Isabel took careful notes about safety procedures. The scene was perfect in its imperfection. A king watching his daughter play with wooden swords, a queen consort learning about military tactics, and a loyal guard teaching the next generation how to protect what they loved. It was exactly the kind of moment that would be remembered and retold for generations, not because of its grandeur, but because of its genuine joy and the love that made it possible.